My name is Emily Campbell. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at BlackLine, and I'm excited to welcome you to our new podcast series, Sounds Accurate. Our guest today is Dr. Christopher Sessar, the Chief Accounting Officer at SAP. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you here.
Thanks so much, and it's really an honor to be the first in this great format.
What I wanted to talk about first was a little bit around what's happening for the Office of the CFO and particularly for the CAO, given some of the ever-changing environments that we're seeing. Given the pace of regulatory, technology, and economic change, what are some of the key priorities that you're thinking about?
The frequency of change has completely changed since I have started my career as a young accountant at SAP. Business models are nowadays much more disruptive than they have been many years ago. We at SAP are undergoing a business model transformation, having become a cloud vendor from our old traditional on-premise license business. And that, of course, also has consequences for the finance function, but also for the role of a chief accounting officer at SAP. I think the areas we have to focus on today are very different ones than the ones we had to focus when I started my career at SAP. And when I started, the topic of standardizing processes and digitalizing tasks and responsibilities was certainly already somewhat of a topic, but was not a big issue. And nowadays, I would say it is really part of my daily life. My predecessor in my role as chief accountant did not have a special technical unit taking care about developing use cases for standardization, digitalization, how we can also use AI in the, so to say, front desk of accounting in a corporate. I do have that today, and must say it's of course also great fun to have also much more of a process perspective and less of only judging on certain accounting challenges and accounting questions. So in this regards, I would say the role has certainly changed a lot. I think we, as a finance function of SAP, we need to be faster. We need to be more standardized in order to really support our business best, also in regards to their transformation of the business model.
Yeah. It seems like the CAO role specifically has become far more strategic in the past, let's say, 10 years than it was historically. How have you seen that change your approach to your role and how you think about your job on a day-to-day basis?
Again, I think the biggest change which I really observe is that the role has become much more process oriented. I think the results which we have to deliver, the closing, needs to get faster, smarter, and more intelligent. I think that was, I would say, less of a topic when I started my career. On the other hand, I think also this business partnering aspect has become more and more important. When I joined SAP, I think the stewardship role, having a close eye on compliance, was always important. And that role exists still, but I think it has evolved. And today, I would say we have 3 different roles to fulfill. It is still stewardship, so being the guardian of compliance in the organization and making sure that our financial statements are accurate and correct. But second, it's business partner to our sales organization, but also a business partner to our product engineering group. So we are co-developing with our product engineering group on our solutions. I always like to say we look at ourselves as customer -1, so not even customer 0. We are very demanding customer, I must say, but in particular when it comes to areas such as AI, but also in the area of sustainability reporting, which of course also is a big and very noteworthy challenge for us, also falling into my resort. We are co-innovating with our development organization, with the Green Ledger, but all of this AI solutions and trying to also, yeah, business partners in this regards. And the third thing is being transformation agents, which is a little bit, I would say, also related to this business partnership roles, which basically means that we are not only following the transformation um, journey of our business, but that we're really also sitting in the driver's seat, and that we are really also trying to drive transformation in the whole organization, not only in the finance part of the organization. And in this regards, I think it has become much, much more strategic, and of course also much, much more holistic, because non-financial reporting has never been a big topic. When I started my career, we at SAP started pretty early also with the integrated reporting strategy. But nowadays, I would say we are even drivers also of SAP's sustainability strategy. And this, of course, also means that we have to provide our knowledge in regards to processes, in regards to governance, when it comes to reporting on non-financial metrics like carbon impact, carbon footprint, because you need a solid governance for that as well. And I think there also we as accountants can hopefully help a lot.
It's a really diverse set of reporting, accounting that around sustainability, the broad range of work that you're doing around product development, working with your sales and marketing teams. It's substantial. What advice would you give to a young accountant coming up, or a young executive coming up? How would you advise them on what skills they need to be developing?
You know that I'm also giving lectures
Oh, there you go. Some people can pay to see you.
at the University of Düsseldorf, so I really try to also engage with young students, and that's of course a very good question. And I mean, I think we have to be careful also in the accounting record to report space, that when we ask about skills, that we don't ask for the best data scientists or experts in Python, programming, analytics. I don't think that we need that. But on the other hand, we of course still need all those competencies which have already been important since many years, analytical skills and technical accounting questions. I normally still start my lecture with some simple journal entries to remind people that this is a fundamental basis also every piece of technology is being built on. But then on the other hand, they do of course need some skills in being capable of using AI. They need an understanding of what AI can do also in the area of accounting, but maybe also what kind of the risks of it are, and where you have to be also careful when you get results from AI to really be able to distinguish between, is that something I can now trust on, or is that something I cannot trust on? And finally, processes. I think that was also not that much in focus when I did my studies, but it's also a focus area in my lectures at the University of Düsseldorf to make people really familiar with processes, because processes, as much as accurate data, is for me also a foundation for all our endeavors and ideas to digitalize services. And this is for me also something certainly worth to invest. But um, when I have also discussions with German university professors, I always say, let's be careful not to be too technical, because most of our most of your students know much, much better how you use AI than we do. And you don't have to teach them on that. Most of it is anyways pretty much self-explaining, but you rather should give them a good understanding of the framework, where you should use it, how you should use it, and also what the risks and barriers of it are.
Yeah, yeah. So going back to what you said almost at the very beginning was, getting people some of the foundational capabilities when you're doing your lectures. I love that because it's almost like learning how to do arithmetic when you're a child. If you know how to do the basic math, then even if you use a calculator later or use those tools, you know how it works. And I think AI is like that. It's wonderful to be able to use advanced AI to build new processes and build new capabilities. But if you don't understand the foundation, if you don't understand the underlying pieces, it can be very
Yeah.
dangerous. And trust in your AI is really, really important. So, as you consider AI, how are you thinking about leveraging AI in your organization? And what do you think are some of the biggest opportunities and also some of the risks?
Yeah. First of all, maybe one additional thought, which also fits pretty well into that. I think what is um, maybe um, even for people of my generation more important than learning is also that you always understand that you also have to unlearn. And the AI is, from my perspective, also one of those areas where you may have to unlearn to some extent to really understand how powerful it can be. I mean, if you
Mm.
ever used Excel for certain tasks and responsibilities in accounting, you may be using it forever. But unlearning in this regards means to simply go a step back and say, no, let's think greenfield. We now have a different technology, and how can we leverage that technology to come to create a result? So I also like this concept of unlearning. I think for younger people, it's maybe even more important that they, because the knowledge develops so fast, and we have so many disruption in that very area, that this concept of unlearning is maybe even a skill which is also very important, and it also resonates well to this whole artificial intelligence discussion. So I mean, when we look at artificial intelligence at SAP and in my department, I must say the least problem we have is that we don't have enough use cases. We actually do have much too many of those. The biggest challenge is to really pick the right ones, so which are actually the most useful ones. So we have a concept in the SAP finance organization, which is called the SAP Finathon. And the idea of this Finathon is, first of all, to make people familiar with AI technology. So they all do get access to an AI playground tool, which we have, and then they can simply try out things. But we don't leave them alone with that technology, and that goes also back to your question. But we also give them really educational sessions and training sessions about how you do good prompting, but also what are the risks and what you perhaps shouldn't do, and when you perhaps shouldn't trust the results of AI, which is, from my perspective, also very important. And then, as an outcome of this Finathon, which has a little bit of a competition character, the idea is to produce use cases. And I'm totally convinced that for really finding meaningful use cases, you better ask those people who are on a daily basis working with reconciliation topics or with operational accounting. And there's a little bit of a competition. They know about prompting, and then they develop use cases. And guess what? I mean, in my department, which is accounting, tax, and external reporting, within only 2 weeks, we established um, more than 100 use cases, from
Wow.
which I must say there was none where I would say it's not worth looking at it. And I think in the overall finance organization of SAP, it should be thousands. And now, of course, you have to make a choice, and you have to make a decision which of those you are actually selecting. And that's certainly difficult. And let's be honest, certainly not all of those, maybe only a minority of those will ultimately also materialize. But I think it's an important learning opportunity for employees, because they understand the power of AI. They also have the ability to judge the use cases which have been handed in by other employees, and I think that's part of this whole change management process, also to make them familiar with what AI can basically do for them. And I mean, for me as an accountant and also as a co-innovator with our product engineering team, the most important thing also of trustworthy AI is basically two fundamental things. The first is accuracy of data, so that the data is correct, that the data is complete, is not manipulated, because that's the foundation for all the results which you get out of AI. And the second is, and I'm an accountant, that you have a really traceable result and that you have an audit-proof result, so that whatever solution you get gives you a context. Where is it derived from an accounting memo or from authoritative literature about accounting. So how did the AI ultimately reach a certain conclusion? That's very, very important. And that's also feedback which we give to our product engineering folks to say, if it's not auditable, if it's not audit proof, then it's for us not really usable. And
Yeah.
I think that's certainly one of the areas where I think wouldn't say risk, but this is certainly something which always needs to be considered. And that's a little bit the downside, of course, also of giving employees the full ability and the full access to all those tools. You need also governance and processes and controls that you don't create a kind of a shadow AI kind of process organization within your community. So that's, I think, also, of course, dangerous. You can do that with training sessions. You can do that with education sessions. But it is, of course, something you have to be careful which data is uploaded, which data you better shouldn't upload. But also to really make sure that you don't simply accept black box results which come out of an generative AI model, but that you really have a critical view on it, and that you challenge it, and that you ultimately still do some professional judgment and conclude on whether it's trustable or it's not trustable data.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really fascinating, and it comes back to that trusted AI perspective. At SAP, obviously being an ERP company, and in your role, it's obviously a very large company. But what advice would you give to maybe some of our customers who are just starting their AI journey? I love the Finathon idea, but maybe not everybody's quite ready for
Right.
that. But do you have something that you would say, hey, if you're just looking at AI, here's a place to start, or here's that first step that you might take that
Yeah.
feels safe?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. So first of all, don't start with a moonshot, but
Mhm.
think about something which is digestible. I think oftentimes the smaller use cases are really the pretty ones. I mean, we at SAP had a use case which was in the area not of lease accounting. That's a fun use case which we have with BlackLine, but it was matching the data which we get out of our lease contracts with what gets into lease accounting, which is a tiny little use case, but it was easy to implement. It didn't take super long. Everyone in the company understands what it's doing. It's matching our lease contract, all this paperwork with the parameters which go into the lease accounting, and everyone immediately gets it. Yeah, that's an interesting use case, and understands why it's beneficial for the company. So I really like those small use cases a lot. Second, I think many companies may be doing that, and we've been doing it at SAP as well, which is creating AI chatbots, and we did that in accounting and tax as well. So we uploaded our AI chatbot with thousands of paper internal accounting memos, text memos, our accounting policies, but also authoritative literature, which we had access to. That's, of course, also something you can start with, but I honestly don't think it gives you the most powerful results. It's rather investment into a foundational kind of topic, because I'm always a little bit skeptical who is actually using that. If it's accounting professionals, they oftentimes have the answer already. Um, I think agentic or AI use cases are, in this regards, really more promising to really look into where do you have a process which is high volume and which involves maybe also less professional judgment, and then really try to establish an agentic AI use case. I consider those chatbots as rather being maybe also generative AI, but I really strongly believe that agentic AI is giving you better results. And finally, I think it's really good advice to simply try out and to not do it top down but bottom up. I think that's really also proven at SAP, that we kind of didn't say, you have to do this or that or this or that, or you have to implement this or that tool, but that we really asked our accountants and our record to report folks, knowing best where the most burdensome processes at SAP are, what creates most pain for you, and do you think AI can help you there? Because that, from my perspective, also gives the most tangible outcomes. I personally also did an exercise and asked my leadership team, tell me about 2 or 3 processes where we are still doing Excel heavy lifting, and we're still having a lot of manual processes around, and that can also help to simply see, okay, where are we still heavily using Excel? And also at SAP we are doing it, and we identified 2, I must say, interesting use cases. One is cash flow reporting, which
Mhm.
is still manual, still happens in a huge Excel spreadsheet. And this, from my perspective, is something which also can save a lot of time in getting our financial close a little bit accelerated. The second area can be goodwill impairment testing, where I also think there are so many different data sources you need to access and which you need to combine. I mean, ultimately, there's also a lot of professional judgment involved in that. So I don't think that an AI will ever tell you, well, you have an impairment, you don't have an impairment, but it can collect the data, it can bring the data together, it can do the evaluation methods, and you can get it out of Excel, where we also have it today. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how much data is still housed in
Yeah.
Excel. Again, I'll call back to what you said first. Like, don't start with the moonshot. Really pick some achievable AI transformation objectives and move forward. And also this idea of starting with at the bottom, letting people develop things and bringing it up as opposed to being a very tops down structure. I think you get a lot of creativity with people that are doing those tasks on a day to day basis and where they can look and see where process improvement and true transformation in the processes is really possible leveraging generative AI. So I think that's amazing. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the gold standard for record to report and the partnership between SAP and BlackLine. SAP is obviously the definitive system of record for many, many companies out there. And I think it's been complemented by what BlackLine has brought to the table and how you all have implemented BlackLine and SAP together. Tell me a little bit about that, and what do you think is working really well with the gold standard at SAP?
The by far biggest advantage is that it is so complementary, and that BlackLine really supports our S4 customers in areas such as account reconciliation. And this is by far, I think, one of the biggest strength in this whole partnership. And this is also where we internally make most use out of that partnership and have established and implemented BlackLine use cases. It also depends, of course, on the customer's ERP landscape, on how the record to report processes are being set up at the customer. I think BlackLine can tremendously help, and I would say even in all phases in an S4 migration project, as much as when once you have been going live with S4, then and with that, it's to me, as you said, absolutely complementary.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of customers that are moving to S4 are actually implementing BlackLine first before they start their migration
Yeah.
in order to accelerate the migration. So I think whenever you ultimately choose to implement, um, I think the two of them together are stronger, but it can ease some of the migration challenges in
Yeah,
cases.
and that would also be an advice or recommendation
Mm.
that to not start too late and think about, okay, once we went live with S4, let's then in the second step think about implementing BlackLine. No, no, no. From my perspective, it should be precisely as you said. Use it at day one of the migration path, because it may accelerate your migration and also result in better outcomes, clearly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, how does the partnership free up finance teams from chasing data and really allow them to focus on insights and activities that add more value to their company?
Yeah, I mean, this is also what we clearly see with our implementation use cases with BlackLine. We save time in our closing process. That, of course, does free up capacity, which we can then use for other activities, for more strategic tasks. And this is also absolutely my experience with the use of BlackLine. You get more accurate results. You free up capacity because you accelerate your closing process, and it of course also significantly helps you in the auditing process because the results which you get are typically having the character of being audit proof and much better to evidence than whatever you get out of manual tests or what you do in Excel spreadsheeting.
I've heard that you have some really interesting use cases where you're actually using BlackLine at SAP. Do you want to give me a little bit of information about that? Tell me about pick a use case that where you feel like you guys have really pushed the limit of how that SAP and BlackLine together is working.
Yeah. So first of all, what I also like a lot about BlackLine is you start somewhere and continuously identify more and more use cases. I'm also confident that this is our strategy in the use of BlackLine. We currently have two use cases, which are both, from my perspective, again, serving all those purposes, being faster, accelerating the close, but also improving quality and audit readiness. One is in the lease space, where with the introduction of the new IFRS lease standard, we were facing some tough reconciliation challenge, which got resolved by the implementation of BlackLine with a, I think, in the high 98 or 99% accuracy rate, which is very strong. And then just recently, we established a second interesting use case. SAP is invested in Sapphire venture funds, which is entities being consolidated to SAP. However, those entities do not report in an ERP system from SAP, but in a third-party system. And that's, of course, a great use case when it comes to reconciliation topics for our partnership and also for using BlackLine. And that's basically also what we did. So they are reporting US GAAP figures, and we have to reconcile to our group financial IFRS numbers. This has been done so far always in Excel, actually. And it was one of those use cases where I also said, isn't that something where we have a much better automated solution? And BlackLine was the answer to that. And we, with the great support of BlackLine, we did a blueprinting, and I'm very confident that now in record time we will go live with that get US GAAP to IFRS reconciliation. And this again is, of course, for me as a chief accountant, what I'm always asking for: getting rid of Excels with manual formulas where you do repostings and have an audit-proof system. And this is what BlackLine brings to the table here. And hopefully, again, we will go live with it in Q3 or early Q4 already. That's the beauty also about the product. There's certainly also at SAP much more use cases. Maybe we just should do something similar like the Finathon and consider where do we still do manual reconciliation at SAP, which we can replace but by a much smarter and more intelligent solution like BlackLine is. Maybe we should do that, but I'm very convinced that there's more very interesting, fascinating use cases waiting for being implemented.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that as you start to explore opportunities, more and more places become obvious for new use cases where you could potentially apply
And you have to
BlackLine
share
solutions. Yeah.
the success in the company. That's also what we are now doing, to say, okay, look, that's how we did it in the past, and that's now how we are doing it with BlackLine, and share it in our record to report organization, in our CFO community, but also in my department, to maybe remind people to think about, is there similar processes where BlackLine can further help us? And again, that's only two examples. I'm very convinced that there's more to come.
Yeah. I think with the leasing example, I understand that that has been utilized across multiple countries, multiple currencies. And, I think the idea that you can manage a very complex process is something that I was really interested in. So, Thanks for sharing that one. What is one key lesson or best practice that you would take away around SAP and how you're working with BlackLine, or just a key best practice? I know you mentioned keep looking for new things, new use cases, but from the use cases that you've implemented, either in terms of how you went about the implementation to start with, or what you've learned, what do you think are some of the best practices that you've experienced so far?
First of all, it all starts with identifying meaningful use cases. And as said, I think you need almost a vehicle for that to really wake up maybe people to think about what are areas where we can do more. And then second, I was really fascinated about also how the teams work together. I think the implementation really went very, very smoothless. And although the teams are highly engaged with using BlackLine, and ultimately it's of course all about the results accuracy and acceleration of the closing process, and getting also faster through the auditing process. That's I think what counts most. And if you can prove that, and if you can also show that to your colleagues in the accounting, in the tax, and in the record to report organization, I think that's to me what then will further accelerate the whole BlackLine adoption.
Great. So, final thought, close this out. You're thinking about, where you are as a company, let's say, with everything moving so quickly with AI, maybe 5 years out is way too far at this point. But give us a vision of what you think is going to be happening at SAP, let's say 2 years from now. How do you envision your team working and leveraging process changes, AI? What would you envision?
So first of all, I think it is in many companies, as it is at SAP, of course, a capacity problem. And I don't think that in 2 years from now, we will have AI doing our whole closing process. I don't think that that's going to happen. On the other hand, I'm very confident that with the first steps we have been taking, we have been building a foundation to really make sure that we are able to free up capacity to deal with all the regulation challenges which we have ahead of us, and to free up the capacity also to focus on more strategic tasks and responsibilities. We all know and see how fast also large language models are developing. Things which you thought are not doable with AI a couple of months ago, with a new version, suddenly are achievable. And in this regards, I mean, 2 years is a long time frame. And I think it's also always worth to look back into, well, was there a certain scenario which you thought could be, with the use of AI, accelerated or improved or automated, but to reconsider that decision every once in a while to see, okay, is it now possible? Because again, this is so much of a fast moving target, and things which you cannot do with AI today, maybe you can do them tomorrow or in 2 years from now.
You have to keep unlearning
Yeah, that's
in order to relearn. I love
that's
that.
true. Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
'Cause who knows what's gonna be available next? It's evolving quickly, and it's pretty amazing. It's a great time to be in the industry and in finance and accounting. We'd like to thank our guest, Dr. Christopher Sessar from SAP, for joining us today on Sounds Accurate. Subscribe to our show anywhere you get your podcasts. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.